My name is Denise Martinez, and I'm your host for today's interview for the People's Health Alliance of North America. How are you doing today, Ashley?
Good morning, Denise. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We want to let all of the individuals that are a part of People's Health Alliance of North America get to know our administrative members a little bit more and learn about where they came from, how they got involved with the Health Alliance, what you
Mhm.
got going on. So, that being said, Ashley, please tell me a little bit about your personal journey, what led you into healthcare, because you work in the healthcare industry, and then
Mhm.
ultimately, what drew you to the People's Health Alliance of North America?
Sure. My name's Ashley Yo. I am a current healthcare leader within a health system out in Arizona, and I'm on the revenue cycle side of healthcare, so more of the finance side of things. Why I went into healthcare? I kind of went in on accident because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So
Okay.
my family is a healthcare family. My dad was a paramedic. My mom put herself through nursing school, and me and my sisters
Nice.
were young, and so she was a nurse for the majority of my childhood. Um, and once I got out of high school, I just wasn't quite sure where I wanted to land. And so my mom's like, well, go get yourself a coding certificate, like medical coding on the insurance side of things, until you figure out what you want to do. And so I went and did that. And while I was in school for that, I got a job as a tutor. I'm like, teaching, that's what I'd love to do. And so then I went and worked towards my master's degree in that coding, revenue cycle side of things. Got a job as a coder, eventually got a job as an adjunct professor, realized I did not like that. um,
Interesting. Okay.
and eventually realized it was really leadership that I was passionate about. I'm passionate about the people, and that's what I really loved about the tutoring was that I helped to guide and lead these students to the point where they had their aha moments and like the math clicked or whatever it was clicked in their brains. It's like that's what I loved. It's like empowering people to realize they have the tools and resources they need to be successful. So
Nice.
that is what led me into healthcare and then into this leadership path that I've been on. What led me to the PHA is one part personal, one part related to my career and seeing a side of healthcare that not everyone gets to see. Um, so I have my own personal health journeys that I've gone on. I think every woman that I have in my life, the majority of them have had an experience where they go in to see a physician or a healthcare provider and um, they know what they're feeling and they know something's wrong and they're shooed out the door. We are,
So
a
common.
number, and it's not always the case. It's not always the case, but
Correct.
I have found that we're not seen necessarily as whole human beings of the mind, body, spirit. We're symptoms that walk in the door, and we're going to treat those symptoms and move on. And so I started my own health journey really from a mental health perspective in my early 20s, realizing that I needed to care for myself and heal my internal world to then help heal my physical body. Um, and I found many different traditional healing methods and practitioners to help in that journey, and I'm really grateful for that. But I've yet to really be able to tie that to the healthcare world for my own self. And being in now my healthcare career, I get to see the finance side of things. My job is to make sure that we have um, affordable healthcare and pricing that is sustainable for our organization and for our community members. And it's an interesting viewpoint that I get to see. And I think there's so much more than just the pricing that goes on to our bills. There's so much that goes on with the insurance and contracting and each patient's out of pocket, and that all is a driver into affordable healthcare. And I think that there has to be really a cultural shift to get us to a point where we as communities can drive our healthcare and take care of the needs of our individual communities at a level that right now I feel like is more defensive rather than offensive. And so I stumbled across the PHA from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, take a look at this website," and they eventually got involved and got connected and said, "Ashley, you gotta come on, you gotta meet these people, you gotta see what they're doing." Um, because it's what we are doing in PHA is really that grassroots, connecting our communities, connecting our people to their resources, and helping people to advocate for themselves. And so I have an interesting view from a leadership perspective and an interesting view from that revenue cycle back inside of healthcare,
Yeah.
that I think really can play an important role in what you're doing.
Absolutely. So now, how is it that you would define community-led healthcare, and what does that look like for you based off of your experience and
Mhm.
time in healthcare? And how do you think we can actually get more towards that type of framework so that individuals
Mhm.
really do benefit from it more and do not experience
Mhm.
some of what you mentioned earlier that is occurrences for some women, not all women in the healthcare industry, where
Yeah.
they're just a
Mhm.
number. It's not really an interactive
Mhm.
conversation with that healthcare provider, which is really
Mhm.
important in all honesty. It's the number one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So community-led healthcare, I think, is really understanding our communities and our individuals within the communities as a whole person. So we have to understand, again, we're not just treating the symptoms. There's so much more that goes with that. And there has been from a, political, or I shouldn't say political, but like a regulatory perspective, a little bit more light shined on like social determinants of health. So if you go into a hospital, most likely you're going to be screened for social determinants of health. Like, do you have a place to go home to when you leave here? Do you have food to eat tonight when you get home? Or do you not know where your next meal is going to come from? So there's all of that plays a part into the healing journey. And we really need to get to a point where we recognize that healing is not a transactional thing. It is a relational thing. We heal in community, and we have to recognize that we as people, yes, we have bodies that have symptoms and disease that we need to treat, but can we get to a point where um, we can see the whole body and the whole person? And part of that is the social deterrence of health, which I think is great. And then there's also the spiritual aspect of that too, mind, body, spirit. And I think it really starts as individuals and being able to sit in stillness with ourselves and stand what we can see there. And until we can get to that point and recognize that within ourselves and get comfortable with ourselves and our own truth and our own healing journey, um, culturally, um, we're not going to be able to shift until we can get to that point. Because I think right now we're still in the my physician knows what's best for me and my government knows what's best for me, right? And I'd rather just let them do the hard work and take care of that and just tell me what I need to do. And I think that once we start to realize that we as a community have to take care of each other, so it's not every man for himself, but as a community, we can all come together to care for each other and create a system that really works for us. And it's going to be a journey, but I see that shift coming, even from a regulatory perspective, with the social determinants of health. And um, there's community needs assessments that your nonprofit healthcare systems are required to complete on a regular basis, and so they're in the communities. Actively trying to figure out what is it that our community needs from us. And there are so many rural hospital systems that are the pillars of their community, and they're filled with people trying to do good work um, for their neighbors. And it's just that shift from the institutionalized led healthcare really is going to take us as individuals recognizing our needs, recognizing the needs of our neighbors, and coming together to demand that we do it differently.
No, you're absolutely right because, you
Mhm.
have to have that aha moment yourself, but then you have to start connecting with others that are also having those moments, also having those conversations and start connecting so that
Mhm.
you as a group can start getting the word out and start expanding and just keep the
Mhm.
conversation going in all honesty. Now,
Yeah.
Are those assessments something based upon your time in the industry? Is that something that's fairly new? Like, has that just been about around maybe for the last 5 years, or has that been around longer?
So I think the community needs assessments have been around longer. It's part of the requirements for nonprofit healthcare systems.
Okay.
And so those have been around. The social determinants of health have also been around, but there's been a recent shift in the past couple of years from a regulatory perspective of more requirements around completing social determinants of health screenings, and now to the point of actually reporting them that yes, we are completing these on, X amount of patients and reporting that back. There's also been a shift over the past, I don't know how long, it's been, slowly growing over the years in value-based reimbursement models. And so that is really incentives for healthcare systems to have higher outcomes for their communities. And so it's not necessarily paying for transactional services. Well, you did this service, so you get this money. It's the overall outcome of the patient and a community. And if you reach a certain outcome, you get additional incentives. And so there's really been more of a shift to the higher quality of care and the better outcomes that you have, the higher your reimbursement's going to be. So there are some shifts from a regulatory perspective to try to move us to a place where we are moving from the profit and what can we do to get the most revenue to we are going to focus on our patients and give high quality care, and that's going to drive the positive revenue shifts. And so there's slow movements in the system, but again, it's still heavily institutionalized and not necessarily community based.
Yeah. Traditionally and typically, the nonprofit sector is more community based than the traditional healthcare system, but we do see those changes starting to trickle in. And I'm happy, in all honesty, because the conversations are starting to shift with doctors and with healthcare systems, whereas
Mm-hmm.
like 10 years ago, that would have been a much harder conversation to have, in all honesty. So, right. What do you believe is missing from conventional healthcare systems that the PHA seeks to address, aside from the individual and the types of conversations that are being had with the patients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's the mind, body, spirit. I think connecting, we're healing, we're focused on healing the disease, we're focused on healing the symptoms and treating the symptoms, and not necessarily going deeper to see what is potentially driving that or what is making that worse. And so I have been in some health systems where they have really put a huge focus and a huge investment into behavioral health within the community and have worked, I've seen them work with local governments and state governments with Medicaid systems to try to make behavioral health more sustainable and more accessible for people and really try to break down that stigma. I think I see with our younger generations that they're getting more and more comfortable speaking about their mental health and avenues for treating that. I think still culturally there needs to be a shift of not even just accepting it and being able to talk about it, because even in older generations I am seeing more of a willingness to talk about it. But the stigma is what gets us. There's so many stigmas around it. And I think like even homelessness, like there's such an impact that homelessness has on health, obviously.
Yeah.
But what's the stigma around that? It's like that's a them problem, not a me problem, and that's there's something wrong with them, until we get to a point of like that's my neighbor, and what can I do to help that person in this situation, and until we can get outside of the me. So what's missing from healthcare that I see People's Health Alliance talking about and advocating for is really the whole experience, the whole individual, and that there's more to healing than just treating the symptom and the disease. And again, I think there's so many healthcare providers out there that are doing that work and are recognizing that. And then how do we as communities and as the U.S. healthcare system make it more affordable and accessible for people to be able to do that work? And then also, beyond that, even as a society, how do we create environments for us to live in that aren't so harmful to our mental health and our physical health. And I think, again, in some of the interviews I've seen from other members, the things we lose. So it's like we don't run outside barefoot, and play and have imaginations to the level that maybe we have in the past or that we should be having. And the importance of connecting to nature, or even the traditional, healers and healing methods. Again, the stigma there, that exists of people. I've heard, they're just taking advantage of people, or just trying to get their money. It's like sometimes you can say the same thing about healthcare.
Yep.
Are we taking advantage of people and just trying to get their money so that we can keep our doors open? It can very quickly just spiral. And so, the biggest thing, what I think is missing, that whole body. How do we make care accessible and affordable for everyone? Healthcare, in my opinion, is a right, and until we get to the point as a society to all agree to that, that it's not just a me problem, it's a community problem. And
Yeah.
healthcare is a right for all of us, including mental health care. Can we get to the point where mental health care can be just as normal as, treating your broken arm, and it's accessible and it's normalized. That's where we need to get.
Absolutely. And the conversation around behavioral health care and mental health, I'm happy to say, has really become a topic of conversation. I hate to say it, but COVID really brought it out into the forefront, and a lot of the stuff that was going on around that time politically and whatnot. But it is a crucial aspect of healthcare and of the overall society, because there is a huge disconnect, and it does not only apply to healthcare, it applies to education, it applies to even family systems and healthcare, of course, but it's a huge disconnect. And it's sad that the industrialization age and, our advancements as a society is what led us to this point, because we lost all of the essential, and we didn't lose them, but we just replaced them with other things that make it easier for us to survive. But it's completely disconnected us from each other and from Mother Gaia overall, because like you said, we so infrequently connect with the earth, whether it's grounding or just taking in the rays from the sun and understanding that it's so much more than just catching a tan. It's giving us nutrients just like it does to the plants and whatnot. So it really is a sad thing, where we're at now, but it is really encouraging that organizations like ours and others as well are really taking an active part in having the conversations and educating people about what is out there, because there are a lot of options out there. You just need to find them and go search for them, sadly. But I do see the shift occurring, and it's a welcome shift, I'm sure, to individuals like yourself and individuals like myself who aren't in the healthcare industry, but are seeking alternative healthcare practitioners who are not just looking at me as a number and are not just looking to medicate me, but are looking to actually help me and have that conversation. And it really touched me that you said the whole homeless thing, because I myself was unemployed for a year and a half. And if my situation would have continued, who knows? If I didn't have resources or a community that surrounds me, I could have been in a homelessness situation. And a lot of times that is what leads to individuals' demise and into that situation, losing a job, their family falling apart as a result of that. And so often we're so ignorant to the fact that this individual went through some hardships to get to where they're at now. It's not just because of a mental illness or because they don't care. Something happened 9 times out of 10. And even if it is a mental health illness or they don't have family, we need to really get away from that person isn't me, because we're all one. That could very easily be me on that floor. So like, it really did touch me when you said that homelessness thing, because we never know when we could be that individual, or we could be that individual that gets that diagnosis of, I'm sorry, we only have 6 months to live. And what are you going to do? So it's a lot. but a lot of people are starting to have the right conversations, and I see the shift coming, and it
Yeah.
makes me hopeful for the
Mm-hmm.
future and for the future generations as well. And even like you said, a lot of the youth nowadays are more comfortable in speaking about their mental
Mm-hmm.
health. It's not as much of a stigma as it was for individuals 10 or 15 years ago as they were growing up. And it's encouraging because I think that is what's going to allow us to continue changing and evolving and getting back to the essence of what we need as people, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And like you said, like we're all connected. We really are. And that's, I think, talking back to COVID, the things that COVID really highlighted for us, I think, is that the rugged individualism that we have as a culture, and the privilege that we have, and that it is to turn our eyes and gaze from the suffering of others. And I think that's where we have to start with our work internally. Because even for myself, like I didn't see or recognize the pain of others until I was willing to sit with the pain that I had and that existed for me. And so until I can sit and recognize my own pain and do my own work, it's it makes it hard for me to accept the pain and sit with others, and their pain and their truth. And so while it starts with us as individuals, um, we need to move to the community-based model. At the end of the day, if I don't have dinner tonight, I'm my government and my politicians and my healthcare system, they're not going to come bring dinner to my door. Like, but I
That's
bet you
true.
I could call a few of my neighbors and every single one of them would invite me over for dinner, and I would do the exact same for them. And back to like the homelessness. Yeah, we're all one tragedy away from being homeless or from going bankrupt and to have to file bankruptcy to get the health care that we need. Um, and I think that's hard for people to understand. Like we're all closer to being homeless than we are to being billionaires.
It's so true. And it's it's so hard to check in with oneself and really take stock of what you're feeling, why you're feeling what you're feeling, and understand that those feelings lead to your emotions and your reactions, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you have to be conscientious of those things. Like, and it really does impact everything else you do. Like, if you're just blindly going through life, you're just doing things. You're not doing things with intention or with impact. And that is the purpose of our time here and our experience here,
Mm-hmm.
to have the
Mm-hmm.
experiences, to have the interactions. And if we're just blindly going through the motions or being on the hamster wheel, we lose the entire value of this experience and this journey on this earth
Mm-hmm.
school. It's so true. Like, until you go through stuff, and you have life circumstances, you don't really take stock of all of that. Like, I was going to ask you, what led you
Mm-hmm.
to the point of where you realized that you needed to check in with yourself and be right with
Yeah.
yourself before you could start living your
Mm-hmm.
life? And I don't want to say righteously, because we
Yeah.
all make mistakes. You're not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. We're always going to make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes throughout life. But it's the fact of being
Yeah.
conscientious of the choices you're making
Mm-hmm.
and doing it intentionally and not being selfish. And I mean, it's hard to sometimes think about the outcomes of things, but like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to think about the impact.
Yeah. No, 100%. Because there's impact either way. Whether you're
Yeah.
conscious about the actions you're making or you're not, there's going to be impact, and you may never know how you impacted the people and the lives that you touched. But we always have connections somewhere that we're impacting other people. Um, no, so growing up, I had a little bit of childhood trauma, a little bit of religious trauma,
Who does
and
it?
led me, yeah, no big deal. No big deal. Um, got me into my early 20s where I hadn't recognized it yet, but I'd spent my life trying to uh, not just please everybody, but try to anticipate what everyone around me expected of me. And then I would make my choices based on what everyone expected of me so I could give off a perfect persona. Um, and so
I
no
can
one would
relate to
see
that so
underneath.
much.
I'm actually, oh yeah, like I think a lot of us can. Like, don't
Yeah.
let anyone see that you're not perfect. And it led me, you know, for a while, and I was in a dark place and had my own mental health crises and um, were treated with medications that didn't help and made it worse because it wasn't necessarily for me a chemical imbalance. For me, it was uh, the choices I was making and the way I was living. And so um, got to a point where my decisions really ripped the ground underneath me, hit rock bottom, and everyone saw I wasn't perfect. And it was so freeing. It was so freeing. While I hurt people and I don't like, I'm not necessarily proud of the way I got to it, um, I was able to save myself by finally just hitting that bottom and the amount of freedom I had from like, now everyone sees I'm not perfect and now I can just be me. And I don't have to worry about what they think of me. I can make choices for myself. Um, and it was incredibly freeing, but still, that's not didn't necessarily lead me to safe places. Um,
I can
so that's
relate.
where you start. I started the work. Yeah, so I started the work, and um, I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I've spent many hours sitting in a therapist chair or sitting at a screen with my therapist now. Um, and starting to do the work, recognizing what is it that triggers me, what is it that makes me uncomfortable, or that I start to feel closed in, like, and saying, okay, there's that situation, there's that person, there's that tone of voice, there's that thing someone said that got a rise out of me, and then sitting and doing the work of tracking that back. Like, okay, yep, I can pinpoint, that, little 6-year-old Ashley in this moment had this experience that her body then tried to protect her from. Because that's where it's at. Like, we have our traumas and our experiences, and then they're housed within our bodies and within our minds, and we build up these systems to protect ourselves. So everything I was doing of trying to anticipate the needs of everybody and what everyone wanted from me was a way to protect myself. And so I was able to eventually start having some grace for myself, for that little Ashley who was doing what she needed to survive. Um, and then having some grace with, current Ashley who was being brave and starting to take away those protective mechanisms. And it's just a journey. Every day I'm still doing the work. I'm still doing the work. I'm still regularly, life is waking me up and being like, oh, what's that about Ashley? And I have to take a breath and I have to sit with it. And it's not always easy. It's not always fun stuff that's coming up. And a lot of times I spiral around to the same things and I heal the same traumas just a little bit deeper each time. And there's been periods of time where I go dark and I let myself not be aware. and and because it's hard to be awake and present in every moment of every day. So there are periods
Yes.
of time in my life where I have stepped back and not always intentionally, but just the flow of life and things happen and then boop, life will wake me up with
Yeah.
something. Um, and so there's the what has always carried me through is this little undying voice within me that's like, oh, there's more. There's more than this, Ashley. So it's like there's this little hope that I've just always had, that I've always carried with me of, no, there's more. There's more than this. There's a better way to do it than this. And um, each stage and phase of my life that I've gone through, that's carried me. I think in my most recent phase, I started to think about just the relativity of time and think like, oh, that's future Ashley. Like, that's me, Ashley, going back to Ashley when I was 20 to be like, Ashley, there's hope. Like, I had no reason to believe there was anything different based on what I saw growing up. That's all I knew, that was normal. That was exactly what I was taught to do. But there's something in me that's like, no, there's more than this. And it's like, oh, that was me now going back, being like, no, there's more. And I thought that was just a really beautiful kind of way to look at it. It's like all of your future selves are carrying you through each moment. You're never alone. Um, yeah, that's my very basic journey us through my trauma and healing, and it's always a path that never ends. We're
You're
working. It's
absolutely right.
the journey, right, that we're on, and that's what matters. We're always growing, um, always healing, and we don't know the people that we heal in that way. And shifting it back to like my career in healthcare, I think the work that I do is important, and the work that we do in the revenue cycle is important, and it's patient care that the patients may never know is happening. There's a ton of people on that back end that you'll never talk to and you'll never see and you don't know exist, and they care so much for you, and for your financial health, and they're doing their very best to make sure that you're treated well, in ways you'll never know that they're doing. But what I love is the people part of my job. And so because I've done the work for myself, I can sit with a team of people and I get to see them for who they are, and I get to see them slowly recognize that, oh, I'm in a safe place, where they may have never had a safe environment before in the workspace. They've never had someone who's seen them as a whole person. Because even I think in employment and in our culture, you can be seen as an employee, as a number, and as replaceable. And I have never felt that way about any of my employees and the people that work for me. And it's um, my job as a leader is to create a safe environment where they can show up as themselves every day, where they can have the tools and resources they need to be successful and to be empowered. And you see on the other side of that, when they get to that place, that their productivity does go up and it is better for the, business. But I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it for the whole person because I have so much impact as a leader on their mental health. So even if you're not a healthcare practitioner, you still have so much impact on the people around you. And if you get into a place, I think a lot of us right now feel like, what can I do? What can I do
Yeah.
to help things right now? And I feel helpless and I feel powerless. You're not, because you can do your work, and then you
Yep.
can create safe spaces for the people that you touch and the people you talk to, because it's even the people you pass in the street, like, will pick up on that energy, and maybe just feel a little bit safer even in that one breath as they walk by you. You never know the impact that you're having, and so it's important to do your work, and it's important to make connections and find community, because you it's an energy that we're building together, and it's
You're
a shift that
absolutely
we're
right.
building together. Yeah.
Beautifully said. I love it. And it's awesome that you approach your job with that mindset and that perspective, but you wouldn't be able to do that and be that type of leader if you
Yeah.
hadn't done the work that you needed to do.
Right. Right.
And I
Mm-hmm.
can thinking about my work experiences and the leaders that I've had, I haven't had that many leaders that look at me for the individual that I am. And I've had more so that look at me for the employee and, what role I play in their team versus who I am as an individual. And when I have had those
Mm-hmm.
leaders that look at me for who I am as an individual, or who have told me, like, I want you to take my job when I'm no longer here, the
Mm-hmm.
conversations, the way in which they approach the interactions with you, let you know that they actually
Mm-hmm.
care about you, the person. And that makes you approach your job in a completely different way. And you never know whether it's a person on the street or whether you're speaking to a person on the phone, the impact that you can have
Mm-hmm.
is really profound. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very true. You have to be conscientious of that. And I love that you
Yeah.
take that, seriously, and you really do try to
Mm-hmm.
impart that upon your employees that work with you and be there for them and be that leader for them, because it's important. It really is.
Yeah. I think even as we're seeing shifts in healthcare and communities and people like really starting to wanting to advocate for themselves and make a difference, I'm seeing the same thing slowly in leadership, is that power over people leadership paradigm of the control and the productivity,
It's shifting.
um, and the yeah, people in numbers. It's shifting because we as people, and I think our younger generations are helping with this, is I want to be seen as a whole person and I want to be valued, and I can't feel I have a hard time feeling connected to you and to the work that I'm doing and my purpose if you're not valuing me as a person and seeing me as a person. And so part of it is coming from a shift of like, we're demanding that we're seen as humans. Um, but it is an important shift, I think, for leaders. And this is what I've talked to my team about, of if you are wanting to be a leader and you're wanting to grow, I'm not looking necessarily for the highest performer and the person who's the best at their job. I'm looking for the person who is able to have hard conversations, who's able to regulate themselves in situations where they're uncomfortable, and think, bigger picture and the impact that they're making, and building those relationships. And so like those are the skills more I'm looking for in leadership, because you can put someone who's a high performer in a leadership position and they may do great. But if they're going because that's the next step in their career, or there's more money or there's more power in that, you won't be successful as a leader because the team won't be seen as humans. And so I think I tried to come from an aspect of everyone's capable of doing the work, everyone's responsible to do the work, and seeing that they're a whole person and what do they need from me and how can I help with that. And so I think I'm hopeful that we are shifting in that direction, and there's lots of people in our communities and societies who are speaking about leadership in that way and in that tone. And so I am excited to see that and hope that it continues to grow. Emotions are, I think, a lot of times seen as weakness in the professional space. And my emotions I see as my greatest strength. And so I think the softness is coming and moving, and we as people can continue to demand that level of care and thoughtfulness from our leaders.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And I love that you prep your future leaders with that type of conversation versus just gearing the conversation towards what are you doing for me? Because that's not what it's about at the end of the day. Like I'm sure many of people who have achieved a lot in their jobs, and they get to a certain point and they're like, what was it all for? I feel so empty inside. What did I get out of it? So Ashley, tell me, what advice would you provide to other healthcare professionals that are looking or considering to get involved in some grassroots programs or initiatives or organizations like the People's Health Alliance of North America?
Yeah. Start with yourself. Start with yourself. Do your work. So that you can meet your patients where they're at. And then I would say to educate yourself in areas of healing that you maybe turn your nose up at, or sound woo-woo, or make you uncomfortable in some way, because you were trained, in the Western style of medicine, and it's so important. It's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's one piece of the puzzle. And if you could start educating yourself, we feel uncomfortable because we don't know and understand it. And so if you can take some time to really understand the traditions and where they came from and the history of them and the benefits of those methods, you can potentially then start to think, how can I embed that into the care that I'm providing? And just bring little pieces of that, or how can I make connections so that I can help encourage my patients to maybe go to those routes to complement the care that they're getting. And then from there, I would say to get involved in the community, advocate to your local leaders in the community. If you have a nonprofit health system, go figure out what that community needs assessment says. Go to any public forums that those health systems have, and use your voice and speak for your community, get to know what the community needs. And then there are a lot of people doing the grassroots work. And so just get connected and find communities you can keep the hope. Because what I didn't realize is that there are other people who feel the exact same way as me. And I think there's so many of us that feel the exact same way. So then how do we build that coalition? And it's through communication and through community. And so find either the People's Health Alliance or find another group locally in your community or nearby that you can invest your time in just to get to know people. Because even if you feel like maybe I'm not doing anything, I'm not making a difference, again, you are, even if it's just validating that, oh, there's somebody else who feels the same way as me. Because that's what you all have done for me. I feel like, man, what am I going to do? What can I do to help? And it's like, I'm at least have hope knowing that you all are having the conversations and have been having the conversations that I now get to be a part of. And that's exciting. And as we continue to make those connections, we'll continue to grow the grassroots, and then overall make a difference and be able to shift our society to a way of healthcare is a right for everybody. And it's mind, body, spirit. We need to be seen as whole people. And then we need to care for our communities and how do we advocate for that. So it's step by step. It starts with you, do your work, then educate yourself and get familiar with modes of healing that you're maybe not familiar with or comfortable with, and then get connected. You could do all of that at the same time too. If you really want to do it all at the same time, please connect yourself, and hear other people's stories and understand what other people are feeling, because you might not have words yet to what you're feeling. It might just be an inkling of, again, that little, there's more to this, there's more than this. You might be feeling that a little bit, and there's other people who have words that they can put to that feeling for you. And
I love that. I absolutely love that, because there are so many people that don't know what it is that's stirring within them, or don't know why they're feeling a certain type of way about whatever it is, whether it's work or their health or their relationship even. And it goes back to what you said. Our emotions are the biggest indicator for us. And so many of us are so disconnected from our emotions. And that is literally the one thing that guides us in so many things in our lives. And it's, I love that you said that first you have to do the work for you, because if you don't do the work for you, you don't see how the things that you're doing and how you're moving are impacted by the lack of work that you've done or the work that you have done. So that's awesome. Absolutely do the work, because that's where it starts. And I also love that you encourage people to get educated, do the research, and find out what you don't know, because you can't be open to it, or you can't have a conversation about other types of healthcare or alternatives if you don't know the information. And that's what I see so often, that healthcare professionals, once they get more knowledge and insight, they're more open, and the conversations start to shift. And you have to be open to do that research and do the knowledge, and then get involved. Like you said, a lot of people aren't willing to get involved because there's a lot of things that stand in their way, or ultimately they're the ones that stand in their way because they don't know how to move, or they have fear, or again, that, like you said, you don't want to let them see who you really are. And it's such an interesting thing that, like, I don't know if that's just an American thing, in all honesty, because like I feel like that whole cultural stigma of, like, as women, don't show your emotions, or even for men, like, don't show your vulnerability and things of that sort. Like, I don't know if it's the same in other cultures, but it's so interesting how everything here in this society, like, it all impacts each other. It's a beautiful thing. But until you start having these conversations and speaking to people, you don't see, how similar you are to others, or how much there is to learn. So I love that. I love that advice for sure. And last but not least, I absolutely love this conversation. I love your journey. I love your perspective. I really love your approach to life, leadership, and healthcare. But if there was one thing that listeners could take from this conversation that you really, and I think I already know what it is, but one thing that listeners can take away from this conversation to do the work on their own, or to, get more insight on, what would it be that you want them to take away?
It starts with you. It starts with you.
Right.
And if we all do our work, and if you feel powerless and you feel like you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go and you don't know how to help, start with you. Create a daily meditation practice. If that's really difficult, yoga can help get your body wiggles out and get you to a state where you can maybe sit even 5 minutes a day. Just sit in the stillness, and then pay attention to the things that trigger you, the things that make you uncomfortable, and get curious about those things. And it's not going to be easy. It's the road less traveled. Most people don't do that work. We prefer to stay in the dark, and we prefer to just feel helpless because it's easier to sit there and be uncomfortable there than to actually face the things that we've since we were children built up walls to protect ourselves. But it starts with you. Get curious, and life will lead you to the path that you're meant to be on. You're on the path you're meant to be on, but do the work and it'll start coming together, and you'll start to realize what you can do and the amount of impact you already are making just by existing, and the impact you're having in your community. And then we all build and connect on that. So it starts with you.
That's awesome. I love it. And I love how you touched upon the road less traveled poem, because it's like something that, I don't know, I learned about it when I was a child, yet it's so synchronistic with life, in all honesty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like when you said that, I was like, oh my God, that's so, you know, I can relate that to life so much. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, I've had a wonderful time chatting with you today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it definitely has. Is there anywhere where people can find you? Like, do you have a YouTube page, or do you have anything like that that you're at this point in time promoting or working on that you want people to know about?
I have an Instagram page called Brave Awakenings Wellness. That is the I mean, I haven't posted anything on it on a long time. I've just always felt this inkling that at some point I need to be in the community and leading change there. And so if you want to go to Instagram and find Brave Awakenings, I'm happy to connect there, and start having conversations there. Otherwise, reach out to People's Health Alliance. You'll have my contact information. Happy to connect with anyone who has questions or just wants to connect and feel less alone and just be seen as an individual.
I love that. Thank you so much. And last but not least, where are you based out of, geographically?
Yeah. Yeah. So I live in Michigan, just outside Detroit, between Detroit and Ann Arbor. So East Coast, even though I work in Arizona, like from Arizona, I work remotely. So I live in multiple time zones.
Awesome.
But I live born and raised in Michigan, and
Nice.
I'm on the water, so it's my happy
Very
place.
cool. Cool. Well,
Mhm.
hopefully we will get to connect in person sooner than later. But I really
Yeah.
do thank you for taking the time today to chat with me and let me get to know a little bit more about you outside of our, People's Health Alliance of North America administrative calls.
Yeah.
And it was really a pleasure. You're a light, you're an absolute treasure. And I wish you the best of luck on your journey. And I thank you for doing the work, and I thank you for choosing to be a part of the People's Health Alliance of North America, because we do need individuals with your experience and your expertise, and also who have done the work and gone the mile and the distance to really be who it is that they need to be at this point in time on this journey. So thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck on your journey, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Right back at you, Denise, for all of that. The work that you do is important, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. Take care. Pleasure
Thank
speaking with
you.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.